Komombo Temple, that lies 45 kilometers north to Aswan city, was built dedicated to God Horus the Great and God Sobek the crocodile. The stones used to build this temple are sandstones brought from Silsila mountains in the nearby quarries. This city, Komombo city, reached its peak during the Greek period, when it was used as a training center for elephants used in the Greek army. But most importantly, it lies in the midway on the caravan route that joins between the eastern desert, the mines in the eastern desert, and the Nubian lands where the gold comes from. So the name Komombo means the golden.
Komombo lies 45 kilometers north to Aswan. The word Kom is an Arabic word called after some monumental sites which looked like hills by time. The city follows the first nome of Upper Egypt nomes, lying on its northern boundaries. It was known in ancient Egyptian as Nepti, which means the golden, and is the adjective of gold or Nebu. In Demotic it became Imba, and in Coptic South Nebu, and in Coptic North Imbu. As for Greek, it was written Ombos, and in Arabic Ombo. In spite that Greek Roman monuments are the reason of the region's fame, yet it was known since the historic period when the first man lived on its land. Many cemeteries belonging to that period and the next one and the ancient Egyptian period were found. Apparently, Komombo reached its peak of glory in the Ptolemaic period, as it was a training center for the elephants brought from Africa of the Ptolemaic army. It also lies on the road between the gold mines in the eastern desert and the caravan route going to Nubia. Komombo nome was sacred to the Egyptians, and they imagined that goddess Tefnut visited this temple, and Ra was her escort. She got the name of Lady of Ombos, and thus the area was known as the throne, referring to the throne of Tefnut. The area was mythologically connected to the struggle of Ra against Set when Horus assisted Ra. From that time, Horus the Great emerged, who helped his father Ra against god Set to rule Egypt, and Horus the Minor appeared, who is Horus the avenger of his father Osiris from his uncle Set. A grand island exists right in front of the temple. It's El Mansouriya Island, where an enormous number of crocodiles used to live and attack people. It was quite dangerous for the locals to cross over to the island, so they thought of getting closer to their worst enemy by worshipping it to avoid its deadly attacks. A temple was built by the Nile and was consecrated for the cult of god Horus the Great and god Sobek the crocodile. Komombo Temple lies on the east bank of the Nile, in an area where the crocodile Sobek was the only god feared and worshipped. Sobek had his own private temple in the 18th dynasty, and it was called the House of Sobek or Per Sobek. But during the Greek period, when the temple was rebuilt on the location of the old temple, the non-primary cult of Sobek needed support to appear properly in the religious scene as a major god. So the cult of one of the famous deities that acquired a maximum religious importance was brought to his side. It was god Horwer or Horus the Great. According to the Egyptian religion, each god needed a family of 2 members to form his triad. Sobek's share was the greatest, as his wife was Hathor and his son was Khonso Horus. Since Horus was great, he needed weaker members, so he got Ta Senet Nefret, or the good sister, who was a traditional image of Hathor, and Pa Neptawi, or Lands, who's her son, and is a miniature of Horus. After choosing the triad members, a special setting should be prepared for them in the new temple, and it must be equipped with their needs. So the priests divided the temple between them in equal halves. The duality in all the constructional elements of the temple is the most important characteristic in Komombo Temple. The pylon has double gates, followed by an open court split in halves right and left, and so does the colonnade which follows. The duplicity continues until the sanctuary that comprises two chapels, one for the naos of god Sobek and the other for god Hurwer. The temple is surrounded by a general mud brick wall. That's another form of the dualism of the temple. On its bottom are representations of the Nile gods presenting offerings, and above them is a script documenting the temple's construction. The constructional elements of the temple were completed during the reign of Ptolemy VI between 180 and 145 BC and Ptolemy VII and the 11th. New extensions were added by the Roman emperors. A foundation text was inscribed above the western gate. It says, "To the honor of King Ptolemy and Queen Cleopatra his sister, the like of god Philopator, and sons, and cavaliers, and others. This temple was consecrated to god Hurwer and Apollo and the other deities worshipped here." The front facade of the temple, including the pylon, collapsed and its stones fell into the Nile. But the Organization of Antiquities stopped further collapsing. That was in 1893. The main elements of the temple are composed of the pylon, which is ruined, and the court, and two hypostyle halls, and three vestibules, and two chapels around which gather a number of small chambers, and two sanctuaries. Since the temple was consecrated to two gods, its left side was dedicated to god Sobek Ra and his wife Hathor, who is called here Ta Senet Nefret, and their son Horus the child, who is also called Hur Pa Ghired or Hur Simatawi, and wore the Hem crown. The temple is directed towards the Nile, but the visitors enter through the western gate, then head to the front court, where the Mamizi or the birth chapel lies on its southwestern corner. It was built by Ptolemy II and was majorly destroyed. Still, some parts of the 16 columns remain and keep colored scenes showing Emperor Tiberius presenting offerings to Horus and Sobek. In the middle is the altar with small granite basins on its sides. Other Roman emperors like Domitian and Neron are represented on the walls presenting offerings to the two triads of Komombo, while flags carriers walk ahead of them. There are also hieroglyphic texts praising their work and deeds on the door sills. As for Emperor Augustus, he walks ahead of a great procession that includes the Nile god Habi and Nebut and Menet and Anubis and Chemso and Khnum and other deities of Upper Egypt. The hypostyle hall of Komombo Temple is remarkable with its beautiful columns and capitals. It's separated from the open court by screen walls and two giant gates. Cobras protect the entrance above the screen walls, and the winged sun spreads its wings above the gate. The colonnade comprises 10 columns, divided in 2 rows. Their beauty is clarified in the capitals, which were carved in the shape of palm reeds and papyrus, and other composite elements. On the northeast wall, King Ptolemy IX performed some ceremonial rituals concerning the foundation of the temple in front of Horus the Great. On the bases of the columns are floral decorations with a famous bird called Rechit, which represents the whole population of Egypt worshipping the Duat star. The king is represented getting purified by god Tot and Horus of Edfu in front of Sobek Ra and his wife Hathor and their son Pa-Nebtawi, or Horus a child. A very interesting scene on the walls of the colonnade describes one of the most horrific dramas ever happened in the history of Egypt, if not the most terrifying one. It's the story of Ptolemy VIII, who ruled Egypt after marrying Cleopatra II, the widow of his brother Ptolemy VI. On their wedding night, he murdered her son Ptolemy VII, who was a child, and gave her his body as a present. Later, he married her daughter Cleopatra III, who is also represented here as a queen. Cleopatra II gave birth to his son Memphitis. After the people of Alexandria roused against him, he fled and took his son with him. When his wife sat on the throne of Egypt alone, he became mad and killed his own son Memphitis and cut his body into pieces and sent the box to her. Then prepared an army and marched into Egypt. So she fled the country and stayed away, while he ruled the country alone. After 5 years, they reconciled, and she returned and sat beside him on the throne, until he died in 116 BC, at the age of 65, and she followed him. The horrific tragedy ended by Cleopatra III sitting on the throne after putting the country under her control. The Hypostyle Hall of Komombo Temple is distinguished with the several scenes of purification, which was a basic ritual performed by the king or the high priest who represented him. Here we see King Ptolemy II being purified by god Horus of Edfu, whose name is Hor-Behdet, and god Tot. Replacing the water are the two symbols of Ankh and Was, which symbolizes the holy water. God Sobek the crocodile stands on the right, and God Horus the Great supervises the purification and stands on the left. The ceiling of the hall is decorated with the image of the female vulture. As for the inner walls, they bear the name of Ptolemy XII, known as Neos Dionysos, or the trumpet player. The finest scene is that of goddess Isis Ra'it, presenting the king with the key of life in the presence of a number of deities. This hall resembles in its design its similar ones in Edfu and Dendera and Philae temples. Above one of the two small gates on the northern wall of this hall is a scene of Ptolemy XII presenting offerings to the gods of the four winds. The following hypostyle hall comprises 10 columns, shorter than the first hypostyle hall, which suggests a lower ceiling than the front one. It was built and decorated during the reign of Ptolemy VIII or Euergetes II. Its scenes show him presenting offerings to god Sobek and his triad. Horwer and his triad are on the other side with the king. Two giant doors on the eastern wall of this hall lead to the inner part of the temple. Scenes on the doors represent Ptolemy VI, who is the older brother of Ptolemy VIII, performing different rituals in front of Horware, and on the sill of the eastern wall, Ptolemy VI is shown with his wife Cleopatra II, presenting offerings, once to Sobek and once to Horus the Great. The hall by itself is the best representation of the participation of the Ptolemy kings in building Komombo Temple, one generation after another, especially that they made the city the capital of the first nome of Upper Egypt. Komombo Temple is the only temple in Egypt that's dedicated to two gods equally, each with his own family. The two triads share the temple that's almost split into halves with an imaginary border. Naturally, each god has his own sanctuary. The double sanctuaries exist on the axis of the temple straight from the gates. They're almost completely destroyed, but are marked with the black granite altars that still sit in the middle of each sanctuary. They were for the rest of the sacred barks, which contained the golden statues of the two gods Sobek and Horwere. The divine revelation has played an important role in the culture of the ancient world in general and in the ancient Egyptian culture in particular. It was a breakout in cases of despair and the answer to corrupt judgment. One of the places of consulting with the gods was a sanctuary, where a small chamber existed behind it. Since the sanctuary in Komombo is destroyed, the back room was exposed. It's where the priest who acted as a medium hid to play the role of the god and answered back the people's prayers and pleads. A hollow channel joined between the hidden chamber and the sanctuary. It allowed the voice of the priest to reach the one who asked the revelation standing in the sanctuary. At that moment, he is supposed to be the voice of God who is saying a decision which the appealer hoped to be in his favor. Silence would mean a rejection to the plead. The double sanctuaries were built during the reign of Ptolemy VI. These chambers behind the sanctuaries were built as living quarters for the priests who were serving God Sobek and God Horwere in the temple, and playing the role of the revelation was considered one of their duties, but only performed by a degree priest who was allowed to act as a medium.